org chart and status report right now. Wrong keyboard.
There's a question.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so the reading that was assigned to us, I believe we had to report on Learning Suite if you read the online article. But do we ever report the books?
The books are all reported basically the day of the midterm. Okay. Because I didn't break it up into individuals. That just was too tedious to have you check off each week. I did read these chapters. So for the book checkoffs, they are all three books, I think, are the day of the midterm. You're supposed to check off having read them by then. The online articles, which include, and Webster 1 and Webster 2 aren't due until either 2 weeks from now, I think 2 weeks from now. So I'm going to talk about Webster 1 today. So that's it. The only thing you've got to do this week is one podcast. And you can choose whatever topic you want on the podcast. Like I said, you might want to look at it before you launch into it just to see how long it is. Because there are a couple there which are really long, which, you know, you may be really interested and really want to watch those, but you don't want to get into an hour and a half podcast and realize that an hour into it. Any other questions? Yes?
For the podcast, just to remind me, do we have to, we should probably put the name of the podcast, right?
Thank you. When you, this is a good tip. And I've set it up. When you check it off at Learning Suite, put in the name of the podcast you watch. This is mostly for your benefit. And you should be able to go back and see your own answers. Because sometimes you get, 10 weeks into this, it's like, okay, which ones of these did I watch? And you can go back and look through your answers for the previous podcasts that you checked off and said, oh yeah, I already saw it.
Does it need like any notes in there too, or just that we
Just as you watched it.
watch
Yeah.
this one?
Here, this is your seniors. This is all honor stuff. I trust that you're doing this. Okay, so what you're going to be doing is teams. Next 2 weeks, and since you don't have class next week, you've got lots of time to do this. You need to start meeting as a team. Oh, hang on a second. I'm saving myself some editing problems. Separate video. As a team, now that you're teams, you need to get together and figure out, start talking about who's going to do what. With that in mind, keep in mind that it's going to change. In other words, you can just as easily say, oh, well, we're doing all our, we've got to do X, Y, and Z over the next 2 weeks to figure out what we're doing. And we have to figure out who wants to put in what work and who's best suited for different roles. Now, there are organizations that like to say, oh, it's an open matrix, everyone does everything. And usually what happens when you have an organization where everyone does everything is that nobody does anything. Things fall in the gaps. Most effective organizations is where everyone is a gatekeeper for her or his own particular domain. That person says, yes, this is done, or no, I'm not doing anything more until I get this, this, and this, because I depend upon this. Now, the issues you have is that, quite honestly, there is a lot of ego and prestige in development team roles. You'll find this out in the real world. The way you conjugate the verb to program is I architect, you code, he, she, or it does QA. So the point is that what part of what you're going to have to do in your teams over the next 2 weeks is figure out who wants to do what, who is best suited to do what, and who is willing to do what. And to do that, you're going to have to talk about your project and the things that you're going to have to get done. There's a real issue here that you're going to have to start making decisions early. This is very real world. you have one semester. Actually, you have less. You've got about, at this point, so your first demonstration, you have, what, about 10 weeks? It's mid-March. So you've got to hit the ground running and start making decisions and figure out who is going to do what. This is a class. It's going to be over in April, mid-April. Last day of class is April 15th. You may have to put your ego aside and accept a role in the class or in a team that may not be what you think you want to do. This is a benefit. I have done just about everything there is to do in IT. I've done technical writing. I've done tech support. I've done architecture. I've done software engineering. I've done debugging of assembly language code. I've done maintenance development. I've done brand new systems from scratch. The more you understand all the different roles within software development, the better you will be in whatever role you are in. One of the biggest areas of dysfunction within IT is that too often in organizations that see the different roles as being adverse to each other instead of complementary. To use a sports team analogy, it's sort of like having the offensive line hate the quarterback. Okay? You're not getting a lot of pass protection. Oh, look, he got right by me. So this is a good opportunity to explore the roles, and there's nothing that stops you, except for, incredibly compressed time, from shifting roles through the course of the project. What you want to do is start determining over the next 2 weeks all the work you want to get done, which means you're going to have to start thinking about what that first demo, what you want to have in there. And work backwards from there and figure out all you're going to do. This is what happens far too often. Brought me on a marker, so they never trust that the marker is actually right. Here's how we tend to approach software projects. Here is our bright idea, and then we do a prototype, and then we start coding, and somewhere here a miracle occurs. And we have a shipped product. Okay? And what you'll see time and again is that they'll start out here and they just keep pushing along here. What you want to do, let's say this is actually, for your purposes, your first demo. That is a numeral 1 there. What you want to do is start there and say, okay, if we're doing this on, say, March 15th or whatever the date is, something like that. What would be 15th? This 15th? 14th? 13th? Actually, maybe 15th. 14th, something like that. What you want to do is you want to work this way. If we're going to show this here, then the week before we're going to have this done, and the week before that we're going to have this done, and the week before that. Now, we're going to have a whole lecture on PERT and Gantt charts. You're going to have to do both for your team projects and so on. But the next 2 weeks is when you want to think about what it's actually going to take. You have to figure out what you want to demo, and then figure out what all the hard problems are to solve in order to accomplish that demo. This is something you're going to hear me say so often you'll be tired of it. It's probably true of a lot of what I say. Again, a big source of failure in software projects is that you defer all the hard problems to the end. And as a result, you get, this is proverbial, we're 80% done, and then it goes on for months. Because basically what you pushed off are all the hard problems, and now you're having to solve the hard problems. You want to identify the hard problems up front and then get rid of as many of them up front as you can. By doing what? How do you build by schedule time? I've already said this a couple times. Drop features. Drop features. So figure out what you want to do for the first demo in March, and then figure out which features you're going to drop because you're probably not going to have time to get it done in the next 10 weeks. Which features will require the hardest problems to be solved? And, go for the stuff that's easy. Okay. What have been some of your experiences? That was a long digression. What have been some of your experiences on development teams or organizations where roles are not clearly defined or coordinated? Anyone have experiences you want to share? I see some nodding. Yes.
I had one where it was just a small kind of deal. There were no roles at all, and I ended up doing everything and not getting noticed for any of it.
Yes, that happens all the time. Trust me. Yes.
From a developer standpoint, you don't know who to go to with questions, whether that's QA or UI or whoever who does what.
Yep.
I've seen also two people working on the same problem.
Yes.
Coming out of the same solution.
Yes. And they'll come up with different solutions that aren't compatible. So it's not that you merge the source code. And then you have these big fights and say, well, mine's better. Well, mine's better for this, and so on. It's a waste of time and effort. Any more? Everyone's like, no, let's get through the lectures. Okay. So, why have an organization chart? Oh, it looks nice. It's a way of encapsulating the roles and forcing you to think about them and sort of forcing some of the issues up front, quite frankly. Again, appropriate division of labor, focus on individual talent, skills, and interests, if you can. If not, just here's what we need done. Like I said, I've done about everything. I've also shrink-wrapped product for shipping. You do the startup, you do everything. And you learn to do everything. You learn to do everything well. I've also spent time as a booth bunny. Not a bunny, but I've spent time in booths at trade shows, selling and pitching products. You want to establish lines of communication that reflect the target architecture. We're going to talk about, unfortunately, we're not going to talk about this until at least 2 weeks from now. This is Conway's Law. This is out of Mythical Man Month. A given team that has an organization will build software whose architecture reflects the organization. So what you want to do is you want to get ahead of that and organize your team to reflect what you think is the best architecture. So if you've got a system where you're dealing with a back-end server and a mobile user interface and maybe something else that's actually running the game, if that's it, you may want to organize your team that way, so that the communications between the sub-teams matches the communications within the system architecture. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a mess. We're going to talk about aligning team and individual goals in a later lecture. Challenges: deciding how you're going to decide these roles, not knowing what you need yet, competing for prestige jobs, available talents and skills don't always match required positions. Don't forget that you can reorganize. These are all the problems you're going to be wrestling with for the next 2 weeks, and really for a lot of the semester. So just be aware up front. A lot of you, when I asked you last week, why are you here, said, because I want to work on a bigger project. Well, yeah, welcome to bigger projects. You're about to discover the challenges of bigger projects. Software development's a lot easier when it's just you, or just you and one other person. You have very high communication bandwidth. It's very easy to come to meeting lines. Each new person you add complicates the decision-making process and introduces new gaps into which necessary work can fall without getting accomplished. So, all I'm asking for from each team, and this is for a week from Saturday, not this Saturday, upload on your wiki. You can use whatever tool you want as long as I can read it. An org chart. What I want are roles, names, and arrows of communication and or management. If you just have lines between boxes, that tells me nothing. So you need arrows to indicate either, this person is supervising this person or this person has to talk to this person. If everyone is pointing at everyone else, you really haven't organized. Unless you got, if there were 3 or 4 people, you might literally have everyone talking to everyone else. If you've got 7, 8, or 9, there should be some clear distinctions. And you'll notice these do basically break up the organization into chunks with communications paths between those chunks. Any questions here? Possible role titles. Yeah. Yes.
So, do there have to be separate management roles for like smaller groups?
Well, it doesn't have, well, what you do have to have, 2 mandatory roles here. I want a project manager. And the project manager is going to be responsible for the weekly status reports. And we'll talk about this, I think, in 2 weeks. I want someone designated as a chief software architect. And those have to be 2 different people. I will talk more about why in 2 weeks. But I spent 1.5 years at Pages as a project manager and a chief software architect, and those are mutually incompatible roles. And my performance in both areas suffered as a result. Yes?
Are you going to explain the differences between these roles?
I will. Basically, project manager is the person making sure everyone gets everything done. Chief software architect is a person responsible for ensuring conceptual unity within your implementation. Here are the technologies we're using. Here is how the components will fit together. You know, here's the subsystems. Here are the important roles for it. Basically, someone who, we'll talk, go read chapter 4 of Mythical Man Month, which I think you're reading between now and next week. And I believe there's a chapter in architecture in Accelerate as well. But what you need is someone to basically be the technical decision maker. The person who says, this is how things are going to go together and interact. Because otherwise you can waste weeks trying to decide it. Yeah.
So just as a clarification, would it be safe to say that the project manager is over people and the chief architect is over code?
Generally speaking, yes. That's probably, for the purposes of this project, yeah. 500, yes.
And along this, so the project manager and the chief architect, they can't be involved in any other?
Oh yeah, at Pages, I probably wrote 100,000 lines of code.
Oh my gosh.
And I did a lot of the testing and bug fixing. So yes, chief architect, they can be involved in other stuff. The project manager, you know, particularly if it's a small team, the project manager is probably going to be coding right there with everyone else. But your project manager is the person responsible for certain things, such as filling out the status report, which we're going to talk about in just a second. These are roles, and again, I'll have all these slides up. It may take a day or 2. I have to fly to New York tonight because I have to testify in a trial in New York sometime tomorrow or Wednesday.
Murder trial?
No, my IT expert witness stuff is far more boring. This is a...
Like patent law trials or?
This one, without disclosing the subject, let me just say this. Never draft your own agreement for a joint project with someone without running it by, say, lawyers and so on. And frankly, I'd say probably 40 or 50% of my cases, I find myself looking at statements of work or joint agreements or master services agreements or contracts and saying, who signed this? And why didn't they raise this issue? Now, instead of 4 years later in a trial where a judge has to decide for you what certain words mean. So no, it's an intellectual property issue. But I probably get the slides up tonight. It may take me a few days to get the video up. I will point out here, and this is why we're going to have we'll have a rules document. I'll talk about, if you want to come up with funny titles, you can. This is one of my favorite websites. And the interesting thing is just how pervasive these are in Silicon Valley. Anyway, so It's meant as a joke site, but trust me, those are the titles you'll find on business cards. Now, what I want is a roles document that for each, since you may come up with goofy titles, for each role or title, what are the activities or deliverable that person is responsible for? What approval, decision authority that person has? And of course, the communication lines on the org chart. For small teams, a given person may have multiple roles. The only thing I don't want is the architect and project manager to be the same. This is a separate document from the org chart, or you can embed the org chart in this document. Let's see if this example I have linked here actually comes up. There's an org chart, and then here's the org chart they came up with, and then here's the roles and responsibilities. And you see it's just a couple lines here as to what each person is doing and who they are. Okay, let's go back to the slides. A status report. This is something new I added a year ago, winter of last year. And I really like it. It used to be that, and this is something I was just inherited from Chuck Knudsen, Dr. Knudsen. It used to be I'd have you report individually on your billable hours per week. And do it on Learning Suite. And I really didn't like that because, well, there are a number of problems, I think, with the approach. And so I went out and purchased some standard software project management forms, one of which is a status report, which your project manager or someone who your project manager designates is responsible for putting together each week. And this is a much better real-world situation because this is the sort of thing out in the real world. How many of you have ever actually worked somewhere where you had to do weekly status reports, or you had a manager who had to? It's a standard approach to track. Here's what we did. Here are problems we have. Here's what we're planning to do this week. As an expert witness, when I'm dealing with a case that involves a failed or troubled software project, one of the first things I ask for are the status reports. Where are their status reports? Because that tells me a lot about the project, because often what I'll see is that you'll see weekly status reports up until about the time when the project got into trouble and then they stopped coming. Or they simply copied the same thing week after week with no new updates in it. What I'll do is I'll have Taylor, my TA, will review these each week. You'll have to post these on your wiki. I have them posted separately so that it's possible to see each week's status report separately. Don't just update them when you have. Or just post, here's the latest. I mean, all of them posted there. And he will actually get in touch with the project manager each week for an actual verbal or online chat about how the project is going. A problem that comes up every semester, fortunately it's usually only one or two projects, but it comes up every semester, is you have projects where there's one team member who just isn't doing anything. And when that happens, I usually have Taylor do an intervention and sit down with the project manager and the team member in question and say, what's going on here? Why is this not, stuff not getting done? And as you'll see in a minute, I reserve the right to reduce your grade if you're basically not doing anything in your project. It's a single page Excel spreadsheet. This is what this status report looks like. Just so you know, your project name, the date. Please make sure this gets updated every week. If I get a project report for a week and it has last week's date in it, I will be very suspicious. Your current project manager, this is your current summary of the project, including any changes you might make. Here you list key tasks you're working on, what their progress is, what their status is. Here are the tasks you completed in the last week, any tasks which you thought you were going to complete the previous week and didn't, and what you plan to do this week. And here with the team members, you have billable hours. It used to be, under Chuck's regime, it was like, I expect 7 hours a week. Actually, I expect about 5 hours a week. Work on the project. If I see 2 or 3 reports and you're doing 2 to 3 hours a week, you're going to get a conversation. That may impact your grade. If it's literally that you have nothing to do, that happens, and I'm fine with that. But usually it's actually just focusing on your other classes. How many of you have 3 programming classes this semester? Yeah. How many of you have 4 programming classes? Oh, man.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. You never have more than 3 programming classes in a semester. Anyway. And here's where you have any current risks or issues. And okay, this is just talking about the fields. This will be due every Saturday by midnight, starting a week from this Saturday, so your first one will be on the 25th. Template is both at the main page of the class wiki and on the CS428 website. And this just says, everything I just finished saying. So, what to do during the next 2 weeks? The Saturday, watch one podcast, and as a team, put all your team members' names on your team wiki, or you can just reuse the same page you proposed on. Beef up the description, say here are the team members, and then as you have deliverables for the team, they should be on the wiki, so I can go there to see your org chart, I can go there to see your roles and responsibilities. You can put links to something, you can have links to Google Docs or whatever you want. We're not going to meet next week. A week from Saturday, you need to watch your second podcast, and as a team, you need to create your first draft. And I expect this to change during the semester. Not that you have to change it, but you'll probably change it. Create your org chart and your roles and responsibilities. And your first status report, which probably you're not going to have a lot of hours on. Except I would actually urge you over the next 2 weeks to spend time together as a team and figure out exactly what you're doing. Now is the best time to narrow the scope of what you're doing. And figure out exactly what you want to do and show in mid-March, and then what you want to show on the, I think it's the 13th is the last day of classes, April 13th. And what we're going to talk about in 2 weeks is creating your project requirements and your deliverable at the end. By this time, we're looking at like end of January, excuse me. 7th, 8th, 9th, actually it's probably February 1st. Will be your project requirements document. So now's a good time to start doing that. And the readings you need to have done by the next class. Only ones you have to check off on Learning Suite are Webster 1 and Webster 2. Any questions at this point? Yes?
The podcasts are not numbered per se, so we just pick one out of the...
Yeah, just pick whatever happens to interest you.
Right.
You may pick it depending upon what your role in the project is. You may pick it because that's just something that interests you more. You may pick it because it's the shortest one of all the podcasts listed. You can just pick whatever you want. They're not numbered.
Great follow-up question. On the status report where we report our hours and such, is individual stuff such as listening to podcasts included in that, or only strictly for the project?
My general approach has been it's only stuff actually working on the project. Having said that, something I have considered and may simply do this semester is that up to 2 hours can be reading and or podcast watching. So your billable hours, because I want to emphasize the need to do that. So for your billable hours, I'm going to let you count up to 2 hours billable hours. That's your individual reading, your individual podcast watching. And then the rest has to be time that you actually spent working on the project, including team meetings. So anytime you meet as a team, that's billable hours. Yes?
And then just to clarify, so this next 2 weeks, we're not necessarily going to have to do the 5 hours per week, but after that, you'll want at least 5 hours per week per individual.
Well, you're going to do some time between now and you're going to do some time in the next 2 weeks, and all that accumulated over the next 2 weeks is going to go onto the status report that's due end of a week from this Saturday.
Okay.
And those of you who decide or are elected or choose to be the project manager, your responsibility is getting these times from your people. If they don't give it to you, put N/R for not reported. So if your project manager asks for your time, be sure you get it to her or him. I've got one more lecture. Do you want to take a break first? Okay, let's start again at 3:30.